I'm Angel Donovan, and this is the Dating Skills Podcast. This is a 14-year ongoing mission to discover the truth about what works in dating, sex, and relationships, to become a better man. Join me as I leave no stone unturned, chase down every expert, role model, and mentor with insights to get us to that goal as fast as possible. This show is about bringing you the best of that information so that you can take it in and change your life for the better, step by step, episode by episode. Angel Donovan here with another episode of Dating Skills Podcast. We're at episode 51, and the topic today is emotional transference. What does that mean? You may have heard that emotions are contagious. Well, there's a lot of science behind this, and it's really true. It's not just some kind of cliche statement. So obviously, when you're meeting women, when you're dating women, this makes your emotions very important. You'll notice that if you are anxious, she becomes anxious. If you are negative, she becomes negative. If you're positive, she becomes positive, and so on. So emotions are really, really important. But that doesn't mean that this is easy. I would say that this is one of the harder and more advanced topics, but essential if you really want to get the most out of your dating life in the long run. And particularly if you want to be actually satisfied with it, you can get some good results, but sometimes you won't actually be satisfied with that. But working on your emotions will get you to the point where you can have healthier relationships with yourself and with women in general, as well as getting much better results as well due to this emotional transference. So we touched on this subject a little bit when we were talking with Robert Greene a few episodes ago, and we were talking about the rake, which is an archetype, which is a type of seducer, which uses his emotions very strongly. He leans on them a lot. So the guy we have today is, in fact, the Asian Rake. We spoke to him in a previous podcast, you remember, and he's one of my good buddies, so it's great to have him back on the podcast. He launched last year a new system, which is actually his system. It's a system that he developed since over time and which he's kind of stuck with and evolved with ever since he got into all of this. And it's very emotions-based. And he's called the Asian Rake for a reason, because this was his style. He has a very emotional style. And that system I looked at, and I gave a really solid review because I felt it was very mature. I felt that, a lot of advanced guys in particular can get a lot out of this. I mean, when I was going through it myself, I was like, yeah, this is something I need to work on a bit more too. So, it's very, very healthy also for the long run. And I feel that it'll help guys feel more satisfied with their dating life also, which is really should be your ultimate end goal. Not just getting results, but also feeling really, really awesomely happy about this area of your life. So David, if you remember, he's an academic. He's a PhD, and he's actually writing papers at the moment and collaborating with other researchers. So he's still in that area, in the science world. He's still connected with that, and he continues to invest in that, although he left his university position. So, as usual, you can get all the show notes, a transcript and everything like that at the address datingskillsreview.com/DSP51. Now let's get into this interview. Okay, David, it's great to have you on the show. Did you know that the most popular podcast episode we've ever had was episode 19? And guess who was on that show?
Really?
Yeah, you were, man. So,
awesome. Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah, I know. People love that show. So it's cool. Kind of funny because it's just about Asia and Asian women. Yeah. So it's kind of a niche subject, but it still turned out to be the top one.
Oh, that's great. It's cool to hear.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I love talking to you. I love being on here.
Yeah, me too. And great to have you back on the show. It's awesome to have you here. So last time we didn't really go a lot into your background. It's something I've started doing with a lot of people here now. So could you just give us a quick background of how you got into this whole dating relationship stuff? What happened?
Yeah, well, when I was 25, I got married. I was a conservative Christian Chinese Canadian boy who wanted to have guilt-free sex. So okay. I married the sweet girl that I was dating at the time. And then it, of course, did go well because I had no clue about relationships. I was insecure and so on.
Yep.
And it fell apart after about 4 or 5 years. We were separated. And we were in different parts of the world. And I needed to get my social life back together, let alone my dating life. I didn't even have the social life. And I was lucky enough to have met At the university campus, one of the key guys in this pickup artist community at the time, which was, this is almost a decade ago, Christian Hudson, who now runs The Social Man. So he was my first mentor and kind of just got me started, an entree into this whole world. And then I'm a very avid learner, so I just devoured all this information really quickly and went out and applied it as much as I could. And then I went to China and tried it there. And what was great about China was, as I was getting better in Chinese, my game and results got better, but I was forced to focus on the nonverbals because my Chinese fluency wasn't as good at the beginning. That really forced me to get back to the fundamentals and focus on body language, just the sound of my voice, the strict tonality itself, fashion, and eye contact. And that's really where the Rake style became my main thing, because it wasn't so much about eloquence or a lot of routines or complicated words. It was a lot more about just understanding, feeling your emotions and letting those take hold.
Yeah, like I want to dig quite deeply into Rake in all the Rake thing in a minute, because you basically, as you said, you started right from that at the beginning, and I want to look into why that was, apart from what you just said. So quickly, let's cover a few other things. How old are you right now?
I just turned 37 a few months ago.
Where do you live?
I moved to Singapore to become a professor of Asian philosophy and religion at the National University of Singapore. And then a few years into that, I resigned to go full-time into starting the Aura Dating Academy, which is my company here, which trains people in dating and relationships. So that's very successful now. We've had hundreds of live clients and thousands of people all over the world who've benefited from the materials we've been putting out. So yeah, it came down to a choice of, do I want to make a difference in a very important part of people's lives, which is relationships? Or do I want to keep teaching college kids something very erudite and abstract that they may never use in their lives?
I can totally understand how you switched there. How many women would you say you slept with to date?
Oh, over 200, but I haven't been counting for years.
Right. That tends to happen.
Have you been
No, I stopped counting somewhere around 80. And then that was like a few years ago.
I stopped counting around 150.
That's quite
but even then, but around past 50, it got really fuzzy.
Right.
Just kind of guesstimated.
So how many relationships have you had?
Oh, wow. Well, significant ones is the ex-wife. And after that, I would say 5 relationships that really mattered in terms, then that each lasted more than a year.
Right. I mean, you've had, you just came out of one that was quite long. Yeah. You've had really long relationships.
4 years. Yeah, I just came out of one that was 4 yeyears exclusive.
Right. And then your marriage was how long?
7 years total.
Okay,
7
cool.
years.
Right.
Yeah, I'm an older guy.
Excellent. And so what is your dating and relationships lifestyle like today? And are you happy with it, or are you changing it?
Yeah, now, well, I got out of a longer relationship. I didn't just get, I think it's now been more than half a year from a 4-year relationship. And I'm not in any mood to settle down in terms of forming deep attachments. One interesting thing that changed a lot is I used to do a lot of dates. And I would close on the first date. Usually, I try to close on the first date, really gun for it. Now I'll put in maybe 15 minutes. Okay. And if it's not a done deal, I'll either friend zone her, and I love just having female friends. It's great.
Yeah.
Or I'll just next her, and I don't have the patience to invest any more time. So
you do coffee dates kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. No coffee dates, no cocktail dates.
Oh, I thought you are doing coffee dates. How'd you make it a 15-minute date if you're not just like...
I just go clubbing and I just escalate hardcore. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, usually half the time I go out, something happens.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then there's just exploring just more extreme lifestyles. I think when you've decided in your mind that you're after something short term and you get really good at the sex. I don't know if I remember I sent you some emails about me exploring this different knowledge, right? This the squirting thing I asked you about.
Yeah.
So I've been really training myself in the sexual area. I got one-on-one coaching in tantric sex, which was just awesome. 3 days of intensive one-on-one. I think I'm putting out a vibe. It's emotional transference again, and it's been attracting a certain type of girl, like a girl, the girls that are looking for a good time. And, you know, I don't judge. I just give them, you know, we're all going to have a good time. So I've had quite a lot of group experiences in the past half year that have been fun. Just having a lot of fun.
Great, man. It does sound like you're having a lot of fun. And you'll have to give me the reference for that tantric sex coach afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's something I want to get into too. Awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about the Asian Rake and where he came from. How did you decide that name? You just mentioned that kind of you had to focus on your fundamentals, which weren't language. So is that where it really came from originally? Why did you decide to call yourself the Asian Rake?
Well, it turns out that I'm a very emotional guy. So my horoscope, if you believe in things like that, is a dragon Scorpio, which is like the most explosive, baroque, dramatic figure that when you combine the two horoscopes,
really?
You know, it's like crazy.
I didn't know that.
So I'm like, if you're, you know, the crazy drama dude. And if I can channel that emotion into something productive, it's very constructive.
Right.
I found that I was just like this boiling cauldron of emotions. And when I read the Rake, description of the Rake in Robert Greene's book, Art of Seduction, it helped me see when I was effective and why I was effective when I was effective. And that made me decide that I would specialize in this style and explore that even more. And I just amplified everything to see how far I could take it.
Great. So when we had Robert Greene on a couple of months back, he gave us some specific examples. We were talking about like who could be Rake role models in today's society. Who would we look at? Like if people wanted to kind of understand what a Rake is like.
Cool.
And some of the guys we came up with were Mick Jagger, Tiger Woods, Russell Brand, 50 Cent, Ben Affleck, Bill Clinton. Are there any guys you have in your mind who are, you know, obviously in the public mind's eye, so everyone can kind of like see them, who you have inspired from, or you think they represent true Rakes? Yeah.
Well, I don't know these people personally.
Right.
Tom Cruise in Top Gun. So I know the characters in the movies.
Okay.
Right. So Tom Cruise in Top Gun, definitely. See, like to me, Bill Clinton, I haven't learned enough about his personal life. He might be like a Rake. But he seems to me more like a charismatic. And that was my sub-character. When I was in situations where I wasn't just hitting on girls, like just trying to get sex fast, and I was just hanging around and there were girls in the social circle, the Rake style is not great for that. You know, like when you're trying to preserve social value and over the long term, like when you're doing social circle games. So the charismatic style is a lot better suited to those situations. So I looked at Bill Clinton actually as an example of a charismatic, kind of emulating his charm, really laid back. But yeah, the Rake. There's one guy. Let me tell you about this one guy. He's Iranian. He's an Iranian citizen. Speaks Russian fluently. Has a medical degree. I think he practiced medicine for a little while as a resident in Moscow. And I met him in Beijing through a mutual contact. And this guy was the quickest and most effective seducer I've met in my life still to this point, like that I've seen. He didn't speak a single word of Chinese. He was there to learn Chinese, but he was a total beginner, and I never heard him try to speak Chinese. So when we were out, we were out, everything he did was just pure emotional transference. Like he had the sexy tonality, he had great body language, and he had a decent body. He was a little bit taller than me, good shape. He wasn't like a model or anything. He would do the whole, I'm in love with you. He'd stop the girl, and his opener would be, I'm in love with you.
Wow.
And he'd do that thing where he'd stick his lips out, and he'd do it very seductively. And he'd do it with unblinking eye contact, but it's kind of the soft kind of eye contact.
Right.
And he kind of would put his head side to side, like kind of inquisitively. Everywhere in the world, I think women understand the English word love.
Oh, yeah.
A few times, the girls would say to their friend, like he'd say, I'm in love with you. I'm in love with you. And then the target would look to her friend and say, 他要跟我做爱? 他要跟我做爱吗? Like they hear, he wants to make love with me.
Yeah.
But, you know, then I translate for him. They think you want to fuck him.
Right.
And then he's like, oh, she's already thinking about sex? She's already thinking about sex?
Nice.
And he's like, no. I don't want to make love to you. I'm in love with you. And this is the verbal content of his entire interaction. It's just like this whole, I'm in love with you. And then he just gets, it's almost like this dog, the horse whisperer, or like Crocodile Dundee, where he looks at the girl and then just sort of hypnotizes her with his eyes and his voice, and then they're making out. Like I remember, like the third time we were hanging out, I was on the phone with some girl we were at a club, and he was in front of me. He was telling me some stuff. I looked at my phone to check my text message, and when I looked up after reading one text message, he was making out with some girl. Like that, I didn't even see her there. He's just sitting there making out with her. It wasn't that uncommon to have that happen. The first time I hung out with him, he got me kissing this girl in like 10 minutes at a club, and then in the cab on the way home, he's like, "When you fuck her, you gotta remember to thank me when you fuck her." And I'm like, whatever, right? I get home, it's 2 a.m. She texts me, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at home." She's like, "What's the address?"
Oh my God.
Couldn't believe it. So I just went and met her downstairs. And he was so right. So after that, I was like, dude, I get it. I'm going to hang out with this guy no matter what.
Right.
And he was a rake all the way. So I just sort of copied that, integrated it into my identity and my style. And that became my main way of going about things wherever I went. It was just my go-to style.
Great. And that was like, what, 2005, 2000? Whereabouts was that?
Yeah. 06, 07, 08.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things you say in your course, which is all about this, is your strength is your desire. Mm-hmm. So is it all about that? Is that what you would sum the rake up as?
Yes. If you're not, maybe some guys might have noticed this. If you're not horny, or if you have low testosterone, and you go out and try to meet women, like you're really tired because it was a Friday night, let's say, and you work from 8 a.m. And you got no mojo, you got no, no drive in your eyes. Like I've done this on nights I worked really hard, and then on work, I go out because I feel like I should go out, and I got nothing happening. I just get discouraged. And I realize it's just because I'm tired. I'm really, really tired. Like if I took a blood test, my T levels would probably be really low. Yeah. And that's a big part of it, like managing your biochemistry so that you can call up this tremendous fountain of emotion and energy, and then you control it. That's where the power is at.
Right. Yeah, because I was going to talk to you about this, because this is where I've been looking at it for a while, is that it's like when you're doing this rake stuff, you're kind of shining this light of your charisma, of your emotions on the girl, right? And it's like this energy just kind of goes into her. And I got this idea from a natural friend of mine. He was in like Shanghai, and he just had so much energy. He must have good genes or something. This guy was like unstoppable. He would like party all night. He would like go all day working, and he just had so much energy. It just made you jealous because he would never tire. He'd always be the last one in the party, still going. And every time he turned to a girl and he switched his energy on, or guys, or like the whole group, he would just kind of get them all like a bit more energetic and like get them to like get up and do stuff. And it was really like he was shining. He just chose where to put this light and shine it on, and it would kind of get like passed around. Is that? Can you relate to that? Is that something you think about too?
It's something like that. I know a guy. One of my clients here is super high energy. I was just out with him Saturday night, and he was just unstoppable. Like, in fact, he's so loud that he overpowers conversations in the near proximity. Like, if I'm talking to a girl and he just starts his thing, everybody just looks at him, and it's kind of cock blocking. Like, dude, tone it down. But he's drawing everybody in like fucking whirlwind, and he just picks girls up, and they all want to get on him. And that's a style that is very effective, obviously, in certain venues. Yep. I would need to have that energy. That's the amount of energy that you would need to, that if you could call on, that would be very powerful. But the rake energy is controlled. Okay. So it can't just be this wildfire, like a scorched earth method, like energy. It's more like Cyclops. It's like the X-Men. That's how I think about it. Because for me, I have relatively large eyes for an Asian guy. So I noticed that I copied the Iranian dude just doing this hypnosis thing on girls just through eye contact, like a trance. If I widen my eyes and I can like try to dilate my eyes on purpose, like consciously, just by opening up my eyes more and just thinking really horny thoughts, I can dilate my pupils, and then my eyes are really wide. Girls have remarked to me many times that they didn't hear what I just said, right? But they're looking right at my eyes, sort of like smiling in this trance look. So to me, it's the image I have is the Cyclops, where he's got those laser beams coming out of his eyes every time he opens them, but he's got to control them or he's going to like kill people. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like that. Like I can't turn it on all the time because it's a limited resource. Energy is a limited resource. And if I'm 37, like if I was 25, maybe I could keep it going, like loud, high energy stuff. I try to control it, have it sublimated so that when it comes out, it's just me and her. Like, I don't need to draw attention to a group I'm just homing in on that one. And then I could tell her, oh, I'm in love with you. I'm in love with you. Stop. No, come look at me. And the world fades away because it's just the two of us. And I think that's a different energy from the party guy or the frat guy, who does keg stands and gets everybody involved. I don't really get everybody involved.
And it's more efficient as well, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't have boundless energy, that's a better strategy.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what Robert Greene said in our interview about the rake, like how he likes to look at it. I just want you to see if you think of it this way or you look at it differently. He says, if you look at the rake, a simple way of looking at it and measuring it is like the degree to how much the person is obsessed with the woman. So if someone is just interested in sex and going to bed with 300 women, but it's kind of cold and they're doing it out of something else, that's not necessarily a rake. It's more the fact that this is a man who really, really is obsessed with women, their psychology, with who they are. He really likes them deep down inside. He likes their company. He's not necessarily a man's man. In fact, most rakes have a slight feminine edge to them.
Yeah. Feminine edge. So it was just combining a bunch of different themes in that statement. One is that he's not just after sex, but he loves women.
Yeah.
Right. So
because like the way I think about that, there's some guys who are teaching dating advice in this kind of cold, hands-off manner today. And if you look at the reports, some of them write stories and stuff. So they're sleeping with women, but, it's very cold. And they're also I find that these guys tend to be very negative about the whole experience and they tend to be more misogynist. And they're also they don't want to put very much time into it because they're not really enjoying it. They just kind of want to get the lay and get it out of the way. And even it seems like when they get the lay and they get it out of the way, they're not happy anyway, right?
Oh, yes.
I look at those guys and I read this and I'm like, well, yeah, because they don't really love the women at all and they don't even want to spend any time with them.
Yeah. Guys like that could do the coquette style a lot better. The rakes, he's right. The rakes, see, I was just thinking about, it's like I'm full of emotions. So I look backwards at what happens. And so it didn't occur to me about this loving women thing. I grew up with two sisters, so I've never hated women. And it's a really foreign thing to me. One of the things that I notice is when it goes badly, sometimes the interaction might go wrong. When I get her back, the time when it goes wrong is when I get her back to my place. And if I go cold, in terms of, I just want her for sex, and then it's 5 a.m. sex and you just want to sleep after. Right. Then the illusion that I was projecting to her is just crumbles. And then she's really pissed. Right at the beginning, I was like, why are they so mad? They agreed to come back. We had sex, But I realized now that with all of the desire that was going through my eyes and I was projecting that, I'm in love with you kind of thing, that they were expecting more. So I realized that this is a very powerful and dangerous tool if I don't use it responsibly. Right. And so one thing I started to do was I would be more selective with the girls I bring back, but then I would also go out for brunch in the morning or go for an early breakfast just so that I can let them down softly if I'm not that interested. Or that would create a more permanent attachment.
I was just picking on your point. You said you were tired. And I'd say that that's kind of something important too. It's happened to me too. Is when you've been with this girl and you created I'll give you an example. When you're traveling and you meet this girl, it can often be this big adventure, right? She meets you and it's all kind of crazy. Go around and do a whole bunch of things, say, during the day. And then you go back and you're having sex. But actually, a couple of times I've been so tired, because of traveling and everything, and all my energy's gone, and I'm kind of half not even interested in it anymore. I just kind of want to go to sleep, and it's been the worst sex ever for both of us. It's been really, after all the build up, which it was expecting to be this amazing thing, and then it's just everything's gone out of it because we're probably both really tired, not just me, right?
Yes, it's dangerous when you do that big build up to the sexual act because there's almost the building is there's so much pressure. Yeah. It's almost impossible to meet it. So when I feel that happening, I just preemptive, just kind of surprise her, More I'll fuck her in the afternoon or something.
Right.
I don't want it to, because I've experienced that, you just can't live up to it because you built up too much. But that's accurate for the rake. But he said, so in that quote, he had something else there. Oh yeah, the feminine, that there's a sort of feminine thing to it. Yes. So the rake is not going to have a lot of male friends. And that's something that I think you'll see this in common. There's going to be a lot of jealousy. The rake he's an emotional guy. So in a way that's already feminine, right? So he's indulging his emotions, sort of childlike. So I can be very childlike too. I can really get into desserts. I love desserts.
Yeah,
and I love girly. Pardon?
I've seen that.
Yeah. And I love like girly stuff, like in the sense of like, I like to go to places with teddy bears. I don't know. It's like weird. Like I like flowers. I don't think I come across gay, but
not at all.
But yeah, I mean, like because I don't know, I hang out with sisters. So I think I really helped the whole rake thing because I was surrounding myself with women as much as I could.
And getting used to, because like you say, I've seen you many times grab all these different cakes and stuff and put them on the table, and the girls are like, this is awesome, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a part of it, part of being in the rake. It can also be the weakness. Like I've been in the new edition of the desire system, I added a component on neediness.
Yeah.
That's when you get your emotions take over, that you're not in control anymore. And that's the feminine, that's the weakness of the feminine core, like needing support, needing to be filled, needing, because you're empty and you need validation or you need somebody to fulfill you. Those are all very feminine things. And the rake, because he's got this feminine side, could easily fall into that trap.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Just before we cover that, I don't want to forget this other thing. You said a lot of friends of his are girls. So what proportion of your friends are girls versus guys?
Well, pretty much until last year, late last year, it was, well, see, I dated this sort of psychopathic girl as a challenge for myself. And her duty, she kind of won in the last couple of years because she cut off so many female friends. And before that, it was all female friends. I'd roll into a club with just female friends. Like there was this cute girl down the hall from in my condo. And we were totally platonic, but we were like sister, brother. She was pretty hot. And so everyone was like, oh, Dave's sleeping with her. But I wasn't. You know, we were just friends. And this ex just cut her off. And there were so many of those. So when you cut out my female friends, I'm left with very few friends, actually. You know, there are other guys like yourself, you know, but because of my nature of like loving desserts, getting really excitable about I proactively just try to surround myself with women, made it so that I naturally didn't have as many male friends. But I've discovered that you need balance in life. Yeah. And the rake's weakness, I might as well, it's not a necessary weakness. This neediness and this feminine nature is not a necessary part of being a rake. You can call up the desire and the emotion and love women and express sexual desire just as strongly if you're a manly man. Right. So I've been doing a lot more of like survival things, like survival trips, mountain trips, and just doing a lot more fitness and just working out. In Singapore is really hot, tropical area, and I've been working out in a gym with no air conditioning, very little lighting, just like hardcore lifting and stuff. And it's raising my testosterone quite a lot. Yeah. And it's great. It's like getting more in touch with my masculinity. And it's a good corrective to years and years of being a rake.
Right. So would you say that's something you have to do? Are you still going to be a rake with this testosterone? Or is it going to change your approach a bit?
This is great to actually discuss this. This is a very specialized, like a master level thing about the rake. Yeah. And you find this in Asian history. A great depiction of this is the movie Emperor and the Assassin, with Zhang Ziyi and Gong Li. I think Zhang Ziyi is in it. Anyway, the emperor's mother in the Shiji, the old accounts of history, the actual chronicles, said that his mother was so horny, she was fucking all the ministers, like all the officers. And it was just a disgrace to him. It's like, I have to do something. They're like, the minister in waiting said, you have to do something about your horny mother. So they scoured the land and found this dude with a huge penis who apparently walked through the village strapping a wheel to his penis and just walking through the village like that. So they got this hung Chinese dude and gave him to the queen mother. And he just satisfied her, and apparently she stopped fucking other dudes. But then she had 2 babies by this big dick guy, right? So in the movie, it's a great depiction of this interesting dynamic where he launches a rebellion against the king. And the king heads it off and kills him and kills the kids. And what's interesting, though, is his style is he's super feminine. Like, if you were to watch this movie, you watch the movie, you'll see that their depiction of the big dick guy is that he's very gay. Like, he paints his face white. He has a very high-pitched voice. He has all of these feminine hand movements, like the Chinese opera kind of thing. And then he has a scene when he's doing the rebellion. He runs into the court with the sword, and he's very manly then. So it's like, it's sort of like Russell Brand, like you present this feminine front,
Yeah.
but inside you're a killer. You know what I mean? Like, it's just an act, like Prince.
Right.
You know, like you can imagine this guy when he behind closed doors, he probably like pulls women's hair, like really dominant, right, sexually. But you know, in the video, he's like this flamboyant gay dude, like trans.
Well, that's
guy.
true. Russell Brand always comes off as very feminine.
You lull them into like the sort of complacency, they let their guard down, and then when they don't expect it, oh, there's this huge penis in you. You know what I mean? Like they didn't think it'd be coming. So that was that's like the feminine part of the rake, and you see this in the dandy too, like this ambiguity in the sexual identity is just a device, really, because the core has to be masculine, or there will be no attraction. There will be no sexual attraction. So the masculine core is about knowing your purpose or your passion and getting really, really good at that and finding fulfillment in that. It can't involve women, and you can be on the outside. You can dress feminine. You can talk feminine. You can have feminine hand movements, but if you're doing your thing and that's the most important thing to you and you're a killer about it, you know, like you're ruthless in pursuing your own passions, then that is going to be incredibly attractive, and you're going to be able to incorporate both sides, right? You get all the benefits of being the feminine, you know, gay guy that she can relate to, has lots of fun with, can let her hair down with, and then, oh, there you are when she needs sex, you know?
Yeah.
You can provide that
So,
too.
like, I think guys listening to this, they might think that you can't be two people. You can't be these kind of two different people. But you know, I can imagine from your perspective, it's really not really that complicated, right?
Right.
It's like when you're at work versus you're in a club. You're two. I think most people can relate to that. It's like when you're at work, you can be this really serious guy getting stuff done, right? And taking responsibilities. Then you go to the club, you relax, you're having fun, and you're a completely different person. If they saw both of those people in front, because I know like girls in the past, when they've got to know me a bit and they've seen me at work, they're like, wow, you're so serious, right? And it's kind of shocking to them, like when they see me in a work mode versus, you know, when they met me just playing around, messing around all the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, but it's like, it's not really difficult to get into access different emotions is kind of the point I'm getting. Maybe at first I'm thinking about kind of the newer guys who aren't you kind of used to this material. It may be harder to access their emotions. And I guess that's what your system is a bit more about as well.
Yeah, you never want to be one-dimensional and predictable and boring. So presenting different sides of yourself is great. And I don't want people to think it's like at sometimes you're one way, at sometimes you're another. This is all consistent. I think it's when you think about it very simplistically, that you think either you're always aggressive and mean or something, or dominant, like in a very strong way, or you're always soft, right? So in the West, we have a rake tradition of the Don Juan stories and Casanova stories. And in Asia, the only tradition of ladies' men is the rake, the dandy rake. So like Jia Baoyu in Dream of the Red Chambers, The Pillow Book, Sei Shonagon, Tale of Genji, all of these guys, because they were upper class, like even in upper class Europe, the courtiers had to wear wigs and they painted their faces, you know, and they had to speak in relatively feminine language and so on. They weren't warriors who were sweating and killing people out in the fields. But that didn't stop them from when they needed to get something done, they just got it done. And that's the masculine part of it. So like your style on the external style could be feminine, but the internal core is still going to be, I get stuff done. And I know what I want to get done and I go and get it done. Yeah. And that's the masculine part of it. That's what they'll respond to as well.
Yeah. And like you're saying, it's more like, you know, we all have these emotions, all of these various different emotions in us, right? These different aspects to us. And it's more about letting them out. I think that's kind of what makes the difference. It seems like I wanted to get into this a bit. It's like if you look at if you look at some of the guys who come into this dating advice realm, right? Often I think they've kind of withdrawn from a lot of their emotions because of rejection, bad experiences with women and so on. So they kind of close off some of those emotions. I think a lot of them. And some of the guys also, as they get more into dating advice, they also take on this more controlling mindset, right? So it's like, I'm going to control everything, and they get a bit colder and less emotional. How does that compare to the way you look at it? I mean, is that a problem? Have you seen that as well? And
yeah, I think, so you mean like guys get hurt and so they withdraw emotionally over time, and it becomes such a second part of themselves as a second nature? Yeah. Yes, like this emotional withdrawal makes you into like a social robot. And I think at that point, it becomes very difficult for you to attract women. You'd have to go with the traditional means of amassing money and status and just getting, I don't know, plastic surgery to look good. Because you're not going to be attracting women emotionally because you have no emotions. So yeah, if you go cold emotionally, I don't think you might be able to try like a cocky funny style, maybe, but it's going to be very limited, your options.
Right. Because I do see some guys when they get into this controlling approach, they do get some result. Like some of them can get pretty good results, I think. I've seen a few of them. However, what I think happens is that it negatively impacts their level of happiness. They don't seem to get happier with it. In fact, and if anything, they kind of go the other way, and they seem, even if they are getting like meeting girls and kind of getting results from like getting laid from it, right? They don't really have relationships. So maybe they just get laid, some of those guys. I think
controlling, like they think that they get off on being able to control a girl?
Like control a situation, I think. And it tends to be the ones who kind of, like you say, a bit more like social robotic, right? So it's kind of like, do this, do that, do that. And it makes
so they're more Machiavellian.
Right. And they are very kind of, they have this cold misogynist kind of Machiavellian side to it, I guess.
Well, we all kind of do. Like to get good at this, you kind of have to be detached, especially at the beginning, because you can't get too attached to any one woman. I mean, that's part of the Rake strength. I think I might be deviating from your main point here, but just pointing out like the Rake feels strongly, and I guess like that word Robert Greene used, obsessed, is very, I think it's like dangerous, because obsession usually means you're thinking about this one girl to the exclusion of all else, and that's not what the Rake is. That's not what an effective Rake is doing. Because if a Rake is doing that, then he's just a needy guy. A Rake would be someone who is overwhelmed emotionally in terms of his desire and so on when he's in the presence of that one girl, but when she leaves, he's not. He might be immediately feeling the same thing towards another girl. Like he's just always liking girls. And he's never completely attached or obsessed with any one girl to the exclusion of all others. And if he is, it's very temporary. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm in love with you, but I'm in love with her too, and I'm in love with her too. And
right.
And yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe you remember this guy. Do you remember this guy called Mr. Sex NYC? Mr. Sex for You NYC. He is like, this is like 15 years ago.
On ASF?
A long time ago. ASF way back, and he's like the kind of guy I guess I'm talking about. I think he definitely gave off this kind of investment banker, very hard, and he was super controlling. He was always like, as soon as a girl did anything he kind of felt was a little bit negative, he'd boot them out of his life.
Yes. Okay, I have some very effective clients like that. I have this one guy, I call him Iceman. He's very effective. Ice cold, man.
Yeah.
Iceman.
But is he happy too? Can you give that perspective? And is it only that, or is he accessing his emotions as well?
Yeah, I think it was through his player phase, so that lasted like a year or so, a couple of years. And now he's trying to soften up.
Yeah.
I think he's just feeling a little lonely or something. You know what? I think a Rake needs a little bit of that, that detachment, because it's very easy to go over emotional. That's why I inserted this new segment in the new desire system on controlling that neediness.
Yeah.
A lot of guys I notice who are beginners have a lot of neediness and can't, if they're emotional like me, they can't control their emotions. And the overpowering emotion is, I need a woman to complete me. I need you to like me for me to feel good about myself.
Right.
And those are very repellent emotions. So if that's your dominant emotion while you're talking to a girl, it's going to be, even if you're doing sexual state transference and all the techniques I teach you, you're going to be transferring very repellent emotions to her, and you'll get a very strong negative reaction. But if you can control the neediness, so for guys like myself, who are naturally more love, like we have big hearts, and it's easier for us to fall in love. You could use a little bit of that Iceman kind of thing. But yeah, some guys who, for whatever reasons, are emotionally detached, they're not going to be experiencing the fullness of life, and at some point they're going to wonder, what's this all for?
Right. Like you've kind of outlined a bit, right? Some guys, they get cold at the beginning. They kind of realize something's missing, and then they start more getting softer and warmer as they get better at this. So,
right.
Okay, so I kind of want to take advantage of the fact that you're an academic and you kind of know that world a bit. It's always good to get to the science. So, we're talking a lot about emotions and how they affect women. And like, what do you feel about this kind of state of the art of science right now as to the proof as to, if this is really relevant or not? And we're not just talking about opinions here.
People who doubt the truth of emotional transference, I don't even know what world they're in. I mean, this is so well understood and documented. I've seen it, I've come across it in so many pop science books that are just reporting the reports, which are like, it's so common knowledge that you don't even need to cite anything anymore. The existence of mirror neurons is just assumed. Like you don't even need to argue for it. You don't even need to have a citation for the proof of it. It's just
so quickly, just sort of people know what the mirror neuron concept is.
Okay, right. So these are these are neurons in the brain, and they are in older parts of the brain. The brain stem area, the motor activation area, like in the middle part of the brain. And basically, what they do is their function is to help us feel and detect what other human beings and animals are feeling. We were much better at reading the emotions of human beings, but it works for anybody with a face and a brain. So we've evolved this because we need to make split-second decisions about whether the person is a threat, or a friend. So it's, fight or flight.
Yeah.
And if we stand there and have to calculate consciously all of the cues, we'd probably be dead, because we were too slow. So the human beings, or the Homo sapiens that had this in their brain, and they had a distinct advantage, and we have that passed down. So we are able to detect other emotions by feeling the same emotions that the person we're looking at has.
Yep.
And that's how we detect it. Here's a quick way to use mirror neurons. If you're looking at a girl and and you're feeling very sexually aroused, you just need to make sure you distract her logical mind, you distract her prefrontal cortex from what's going on in the rest of her brain.
Yeah.
So you arouse yourself while looking right into her eyes and talk about something else. So you distract her. And then slowly you just let the mirror neurons take hold. And it could be as quick as 30 seconds, a minute, and she'll start to feel it. And she won't know why, because it's unconscious. So she'll be looking at your face and getting aroused sexually. And she won't know why. She'll just assume you're really sexy. And she'll want you. And that's how it works.
It sounds like magic, but it's science.
Yes, that's right. It's science. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention when we were talking about this before we started the interview, in getting feedback from the desire system and sort of the neediness thing, and one of the issues is that guys have trouble projecting sexual state because they feel like there's this like sinfulness or there's like this dirtiness, and they think these women don't want to feel sexually. Like they don't think sexual thoughts.
Yeah.
Because there are these horrible studies with no basis whatsoever that like men think about sex every 7 minutes and women think about sex like once a day or something. That there's no such study that actually says that. I don't even know where that came from. Actually, women respond just as strongly or more to visual stimuli as men do sexually. There's a pioneer scientist who works at Queen's University, the SAGE lab, Meredith Shivers, who's created or developed this instrument, the plasmograph, which is a kind of bulb that detects blood flow and basically can tell, when you insert it in the vaginal canal, can tell how aroused a woman is. And when the series of tests showing women various kinds of stimuli, including male sex, female straight sex, female sex, bonobos fucking, an erect penis, naked guy walking on the beach, and then in between each of these scenes, they show like a landscape, so they go back to zero, baseline. Men are aroused, they have the fMRI scanner, they have the penis pump kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the men are aroused by what they expect to be aroused by. Straight men are only aroused by female porn and female male porn. They're not aroused by looking at bonobos fucking. If you're a guy listening to this, you totally understand why. Women, however, have shown arousal across the board. Like they're aroused by everything. They're aroused by bonobos fucking. But on the keypad, they'll say, no, I'm not aroused. So they're confounding. They don't even know. Either they're lying, or more probably they have no conscious access to that. Or they're socially programmed or socially conditioned not to say so.
Right. So kind of they're covering it up, even though it's in the study. Yeah. Even though they feel slightly aroused, you're saying that they're lying in the data.
Yeah, right. They're confounding. Now, we don't know if it's conscious or not. So the point is this. Women are horny. And women are very sexual creatures. And women can have 4 times more types of orgasms than men can. Women are also able to achieve multiple orgasms much more easily than men can. And so on. I mean, like, just they're sexual creatures. And they want to feel sexually. So when you're presenting this, I mean, this is cutting-edge science from neuropsychology. They want to be aroused. They're looking for that from their knight in shining armor. Don't think that they're these virtuous princesses that never think about sex, right? They are just as sexual as we are, and they will welcome it. they're looking for that. Go read 50 Shades of Grey and you'll see it. All right. So
yeah, that is an interesting book. It's worth reading. Yeah.
Yes. Did you read the whole trilogy?
No, I've read half of the first one.
It's kind of tough going as a guy.
Right, yeah.
Because you're inside some girl's head and it's weird. But yeah, I learned a lot. They're worth reading for sure.
So we're talking about the science here. Like we're talking kind of like the data versus the surveys a little bit. And, you just pointed out that basically like what the data is saying, because now you're talking about some studies that have really kind of focused on data. What is the physical changes that are taking place in the brain and in the vagina and stuff versus what the surveys have kind of said to date. And a lot of the surveys say, what do you think about the surveys and kind of like the research on sexuality?
Yeah. So most of the research, so if you've even read the research based on the surveys, you're already ahead of the game, right? So I applaud you for that. Most people have not, and they're completely ignorant of evolutionary psychology. But what's going on in the field is that a lot of the evolutionary psychology is being, in sexuality, mating, is being overturned by the research findings in neuropsychology and in sexology with the plasmograph and other types of research along those lines. The old research in evolutionary psychology have been based on self-reporting. So you just ask a girl, what do you like in a man? And she just looks at a piece of paper and either writes it down or checks it off or orders them in priority. So this is all looking at the prefrontal cortex, like just depending on her knowing what she likes. I think anybody who spent any time picking up women would know that what they say often is not what they're really feeling. And most of the time it's not conscious. They're not purposely doing that.
Yeah.
They just don't have conscious access to what they're really feeling. So this is why emotional contagion is so effective with women, because they're so blind to what's happening actually in their unconscious. So do you want me to continue on the surveys?
No, we just want to get a view of what you think, because we were talking about it earlier. You were kind of saying there's a change like taking place at the moment, and there's a bit of conflict in the scientific community because you have this data versus like
That's
the
right.
surveys, and you also said that people are still trying to publish this kind of survey-based data, and it's not very rigorous.
Yeah, right. Like I'm involved with some cutting-edge research in evolutionary psychology, co-authoring papers and so on. My academic background, my PhD was in philosophy and in religion and in Asian history. So now I'm seeing it from the psychology side, and I see that there's a lot of finessing of the results. There's a lot of massaging of the results. There's to get the desired result, and it's pretty easy to manipulate data, actually, and statistics and so on. So especially with just surveys and reporting, it's easier to manipulate that than scientific data, like the natural sciences.
Yeah.
One of the results of basing your conclusions on surveys for the past 40 years, which is what evolutionary psychology has been doing, is that there's this very misleading theory called the parental investment theory that is the dominant theory in evolutionary psychology when it comes to mating. And the theory basically is that women have to invest a lot more in parenting, in childbirth, than men do. So that would dictate a different mating strategy. They should, if they're rational, be looking for a stable, dependable, long-term mate who is high in resources and status, because that will ensure more resources and more money and food for their children. So they should never engage in slutty behavior. I mean, like, slutty is a negative word. So they should never engage in short-term mating behavior. So evolutionary psychologists have been puzzled over why women are engaged in short-term mating, and they have to posit all these different theories to explain it, given their adherence to the parental investment theory. So the new results from the plasmograph studies, from all the neuropsychology and sexology from the natural sciences, turn that on its head, that women are sexual creatures. We've evolved to have emotional lives and emotional connections for short periods of time. I mean, lifespans in 50,000 years ago was like, the life expectancy for a male was less than 30 years. For women was, 35? And now we're living to 70, 80, 90, and so on. We're not really evolved and equipped to deal with that level of commitment. So you're saying once society lets people get divorces relatively easily, people will take advantage of that. And you're seeing the dissolution of family structures and so on because people get horny and they want to fuck other people. This goes right alongside the new views on how evolution impacts or helps us understand mating strategies. Just the takeaway, the simple takeaway, women are as horny as we are. They enjoy sex as much or more than we do. So give it to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they want.
It's great. Well, thanks for that update, man, because I know you're like further into the scientific world than a lot of the people we get on this show. So it's really nice to get a kind of update where things stand, because, you know, people are reading about evolutionary psychology, of course, a lot. And so it's good to hear that some of the data is proving some of that wrong. And so we get that right. Now, we're talking a lot about getting in touch with your emotions, basically. So part of becoming a rake is getting more in touch with your emotions. What are some of the requisites to this? So some of the things I was thinking about, like for guys who haven't had many relationships, is it easy to do this?
To getting in touch with your emotions?
Yeah.
It's never easy to actually get in touch with them. It's easy. Right. If you're a naturally emotional guy like myself, you'll have emotions. The trick is knowing when you're having them, what they are, what it is that you're exactly feeling, naming the emotion that helps you take control over it, and being able to control the emotional expression. Those are all relatively difficult. We talked a little bit about some methods for training yourself to be more emotionally aware, more emotionally intelligent. Right. And a big part of that is being able to calm yourself, to see the flow of thoughts in your mind as they go by, kind of more dispassionately. Yeah. So meditation is really, really good in this regard. And I would say also, the more cognitive behavioral therapy, especially the cognitive side, the better off you will be. If you know how to question, if you know how to identify automatic thoughts and then question them and then change them, you're going to be a very, very proactive, self-actualized person who will be able to manipulate emotions much more adeptly. And you'll have just a more happy life.
That's great. So, I mean, I know that in the desire system, you kind of have this long process which you take people through, and a big part of that to go through that whole self-awareness and thing. I wanted to talk a bit about some of the kind of outside things like do in the general, because, for instance, you see Russell Brand, he does a lot of yoga and spirituality. You see, I know that you mentioned in your course positive psychology as well, and then of course counseling and therapy. Which one of these things, kind of in mainstream world, do you think is like valid and useful?
Oh, in the mainstream world, I think all of them are. Yoga is relatively easy to learn. I first did yoga through P90X, Yoga X.
Yeah. Have you done Kundalini, by the way?
No, I haven't. I just saw. I just saw a Kundalini yoga retreat in Bali. I was thinking about going to do that.
Yeah, one of my friends, she just started a place in Malibu. I was reading up on it, and it sounds like, you know, you want it for this purpose, like the mind and, you know, kind of your emotional side. It sounds like it's the one to really get into.
Yeah, and you can get in good shape that way.
Yeah, of course.
Physical. Yeah, and then the cognitive therapy, I'm just a big fan of that. So, yeah, all around.
So that's it. I mean, when you say cognitive therapy, that's kind of counseling? Yeah,
you can learn to counsel yourself. The basis of the therapeutic approach I take in the desire system, in confronting your limiting beliefs, reframing them, and so on, conditioning, has its basis in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the most proven method of therapy, talk therapy in the world right now. Right. So you can get Beck's book. It's just a classic, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. It's not a very inventive title, but yeah, it's a great book. And basically what you're doing there is the same thing that the Stoics and the Buddhists have been doing for thousands of years. You're in order to change your emotions, you have to question the interpretations that are causing the emotion. So it's a matter of identifying the emotion, then asking yourself what thoughts led to this emotion, and then questioning whether those thoughts are accurate, they're true, whether they're rational thoughts. And then questioning that and just, that's what I call psychological archaeology. You just keep asking the why question. Is this accurate? Why do I feel this way? What are the reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your program, like I said in my review of it, as like it's a very mature program and quite advanced from that perspective, because it's really demanding to take it, you know, to the high level in terms of self-awareness, and it's doing this work on yourself to become a better person as well, and more aware of yourself, and, you know, communicating better. So it's quite, I mean, I'd say it's one of the most advanced things I've read.
Oh, cool. Well, cool. Well, this is all work that you do in your study room. So it's not advanced when you go out into the field. Like, it's super simple. Yeah. And as far as the system goes, when you're talking to women, all the complex work is done at your computer or at your desk. So there, I assume all my readers, or all, you know, everyone's watching, is really intelligent and hardworking, you know, because there's really no excuse for any laziness there.
Yeah, I felt like it is a program that takes quite a bit of effort to get through. It's not going to be one of these magic just pick up a book for 5 seconds or like a few minutes and it just
that's
works.
true.
So you have to do the work.
Yeah, it repays study. But I think everything in life worth having is difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would already have it,
Yeah.
or everybody else would have it.
Yeah.
So, but I try to make it as simple as possible when you get... See, the difficult part you can do at home because you can just watch the video and just follow along in that way. But when you're out talking to women, I mean, you can't just turn on the video and say, hold on, girl, let me check this thing out. Okay, this is what I should say next, right?
Right.
You don't want a complex system to apply when you're out in the field.
Well, no, because yours is all about like learning basically to kind of master your emotions, right? If you want to kind of say it in one phrase, I guess that would be. And you're doing this homework, and then when you go out, it's kind of like it's been internally done, right? So you just have to remember a couple of little basic things. Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
All right, man. So one of the topics I know is kind of a bit more conflictual you talk about is confidence. And, you talked about like different ways that people try to be confident. Because everyone we've heard thousands of times that you have